Hey everybody, my name is Melanie McIntosh, and for our final project, I chose to do mine on the topic Little Dixie and Slavery in Missouri. Little Dixie was an area of nearly 17 counties throughout Missouri that became an exact replica of the southern states. Southern farmers began to migrate into Missouri and brought with them the slave-dependent culture that they had known from the South. These counties along the Missouri River, beginning in the area known today as Kansas City, and continued throughout central Missouri. You can see in the picture here that I have copied from the internet, that band of counties there. And then the dark red ones were considered the heart of Dixie for this. So slavery in Missouri was considered small scale and mild in nature during this time period. This assumption or belief was due to the fact that most slaveholding households were family farms and not plantations. Most Missouri farmers did not require many workers because they farmed only small cash crops and livestock. Because of the small number of slaves on each farm, this caused men to search for wives away from their homes. Most enslaved families were only able to see each other on weekends. Enslaved families in Missouri were also typically allowed to celebrate together at weddings, funerals, births, and work-related parties. This would be like corn husking parties that they would have, where they would be allowed to see each other. The small demographics of this area between the two groups changed dynamics from much of the South. This gave rise to the ability for slaves to resist their enslavement. I read that because of the close quarters and the fewer number of slaves on each farm, which also allowed them to resist their enslavement, it also brought with it negative impacts as well that caused further abuse psychologically and physically to slaves because of that same reason. So some of them, depending on who they were bought or sold to, they got someone who allowed it to be a little bit of a better situation and also worse. I found a picture of this family outside of one of their homes on a family farm in Missouri. And a man that I read about and thought was really interesting and wanted to talk about was Dred Scott. In 1846, he became the center of one of the most controversial legal proceedings of this time. Scott sued his owner's widow for his freedom on the grounds of a Missouri law that allowed enslaved individuals to remain free citizens after living in free states for long amounts of time and then returning back to Missouri. Scott lived in Illinois and Wisconsin for several years before returning to Missouri in 1840, following the death of his owner. Scott did lose the case in the Missouri Supreme Court, but he brought another legal suit to action in 1853. This case went before the United States Supreme Court, and in 1857 the Supreme Court ruled that slaves were not citizens, but as a result, Scott had no right to sue for his freedom or his family's. Even after suffering these two massive letdowns within our legal system, Scott never gave up. His actions helped to ignite the fight between pro and anti-slavery in the United States. Eventually, Scott did win his family's freedom through being granted that by the widow, but Scott died shortly after in 1858. And that is a picture of him. The end of slavery in Missouri. During the time of Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, Missouri was exempt from this law because it was a border state to the South. On January 11, 1865, a Missouri State Convention abolished slavery in Missouri by a 60-4 vote. This was followed by Governor Fletcher's own Proclamation of Freedom and effectively marked the end of slavery in Missouri. This is my bibliography. Thank you.